And do we have any visitors besides Judy?
Oh, thanks. I like the way you say that.
Well, we don't classify you as a visitor,
I'm
though.
a frequent flyer.
I
I think the other people on the call are staff.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought. Okay. Okay, we need to adopt the agenda. I need a motion.
I so move.
Mary, okay.
Yes.
Marshall will second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The October minutes.
I move that we approve the October minutes. Mary?
I will second it, George.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Announcements. I don't think, does anybody have any announcements?
None at this time.
Okay. And do we have any public testimony?
We do. Let me read that for you. Okay, full disclosure, I am an SEIU Local 503 board member. I am not speaking for the union. This is submitted by Avery Horton. The next payment processing date needs to be printed on the remittance advice so the workers know when to expect payment. The total hours worked for the pay period and year to date need to be printed on the remittance advice so the workers know how many hours have been logged into the system. The workers' benefits and compensation are based on these numbers. This would allow the worker to get errors corrected as soon as possible. The optimum would be a table showing how many hours worked per calendar month for the current year. Workers should be notified as soon as possible when they are in jeopardy of losing benefits due to the lack of qualifying hours. When a worker is in jeopardy of losing benefits, their DHS office should be notified so DHS staff can pair them with a client in need so the worker doesn't lose their benefits. The proposed steps in the tentatively agreed contract is flawed and takes advantage of workers. If a worker misses the 2,000 hour threshold by 1 hour, they will have to wait 6 months to get the $1 hour raise. This is unfair and unreasonable. As soon as a worker meets the threshold, they should receive the raise. There is no excuse why this can't be done. This is just another example of how the state shows little to no regard for care providers. Time is of the essence now that the OHCC and DHS has been made aware of the shortcomings and failures in a public meeting. They cannot take the position they did not know. Testimony respectfully submitted by Avery T. Horton Jr., home care worker, citizen, voter, taxpayer, state of Oregon, as always, acting in individual capacity. End of testimony. So here are my comments to this testimony. We do have a payment processing calendar available to all workers so that they know when to expect their payment. The provider time capture system shows how many hours are available for the worker to work. That was a new feature added that they can see those hours and minutes available to them. Sorry, I'm just rereading this again. It's not the responsibility of the local office to pair them with consumers. That's consumers have a choice as to whom they employ. And then in terms of the 2,000 hours, this is part of collective bargaining as negotiated between the union and the state, and they will be voting on ratification. So that's something Mr. Horton can vote on. And that's all I have for this issue.
Any questions from the commissioners?
How do we respond to this? A public testimony, do you typically send something back, or does the commission, or? I'm not sure how to,
In the past, Cheryl has usually handled this.
okay,
So I guess I
so
better ask
that-
Cheryl how she handled this.
Well, this is something we need to discuss during our meetings
Okay,
on future, how we're going to do things in the future.
okay.
I fully agree with that. But
yeah,
you read back where it says ratify. I tried to understand what you were saying about the ratify.
So there's tentative agreements as part of collective bargaining. So the 2,000 hours is one of the tentative agreements in the contract between the Home Care Commission, the union, and the state. So every 2,000 hours, a person would be eligible for a rate increase. The ratification is when the contract is presented to the union membership to vote on. So that's called ratification. They can vote to ratify or they can reject. So that vote will happen on November 17th. So if
Will-
workers don't agree with the tentative agreements, they can vote not to ratify.
So are we going to be notified of the outcome of this?
Of the ratification,
Correct.
yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on it?
well, I'm just still going back to my original question, maybe. I think this person should be responded to in some way. Or have we already said we've received your testimony and we'll read it? I mean, what happens? It just seems like you're reading it and there's some parts of it that seem to be true and then some that are not. Should we not in some way respond, or are we going to discuss this later, Madam Chair? I'm sorry, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but I just don't know what we're going to do with this.
Paul?
Yeah, I think we do need to discuss it. It might be helpful for one of you who have some longevity, just to explain that Mr. Horton is one who regularly comments. Some of his comments are quite helpful, I think, and certainly should be responded to. But just a brief, he regularly comments and has for some time since I've been on the commission, and so probably working out a way, whether just through the minutes that are posted online or otherwise, would be helpful.
Does that help Mary to understand?
Yes, I just, I'm a person who, if somebody takes the time to put this in, that we should in some way acknowledge, his comments.
Okay.
And I don't know what Cheryl did. Does anybody know what Cheryl did?
I do not know. I'll check with her and ask her what she did. We do respond during the commission meeting and it's recorded in the notes, but I will follow up with Cheryl to see if she did a formal email or letter to Mr. Horton in the past.
Okay, thank you. That's all I was concerned about.
Welcome. Yeah.
Because
Thank you.
otherwise you run the risk of other people doing public testimony and then saying, well, they didn't do anything and they just listened and then we never heard again. And I'm of the opinion that if someone takes the time and the effort and the energy to do something like that, we should, at least as a commission or as a executive director or whatever, respond. No, I'm going to be quiet.
No, I appreciate your comments, Mary.
I would think it would be appropriate, and I know we're not going to discuss this right now. If there was a response, to simply say, your comments were read and a response is recorded in the minutes, to drive back to the minutes as opposed to spending time responding through email to everything that was stated already in the public meeting.
Okay. Okay, we will take all this under advisement so that when we have our next discussion on policies and procedures, we will be able to set something up that we will have a permanent record of how we're going to be doing this. Okay, the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. Do you have a report?
I do. We had an offsite, actually an in-person meeting. A lot of the commissioners were new, and we're now at 21 out of 23, and we've been kind of hobbling around with 10 to 15. So the new governor is really making some good additions to this particular commission. So we held the meeting at the Oregon Veterans Home in Lebanon, and we had a wonderful panel of all of the senior people in the nursing home, and they gave us an overview of what they do and how they do it, and introduced us to some of the residents, gave us a wonderful tour. And so then at the end of the meeting, we kind of got together, because there were so many new people, and kind of got together and discussed the ways forward, and did a little bit of addition to the committees, formed a legislative committee. We only had one person, and so now we have about 4 or 5 on that committee, which is wonderful. And I was elected as the treasurer. I don't know if that's good or bad, but anyway, for what it's worth. So anyway, I really feel good about this commission, because I think we have some wonderful new people on it, and I just feel a sense of energy kind of that I didn't before, when we were so short of commissioners. So that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question. So during the Governor's Commission on Senior Services meeting, since you're also on the Oregon Home Care Commission, do you provide updates to that committee about the work that we're doing? Like, just like you're giving updates about the Governor's Commission on Senior Services?
Yes, I do.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yes, because I'm very proud of what this commission is doing also.
Do you do any of your reports in writing?
No, we have not so far.
Okay.
It's not forbidden, but now
Mhm.
what I have done is sometimes if there's something that I receive, at this particular commission that I think would be of value to the group, I may send something written. Not very often, but occasionally I do.
That would help us if you would let us know when you do that, so that we know what kind of communication is going on between the two groups.
Okay. Will do.
Oregon Disabilities Commission.
Nothing to report other than we have a meeting coming up on the 9th. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. And Robin's not here.
Ruth, do you
Then
want
Paul-
her to provide her update when she comes she should be here around 10:30?
Yes, we can call on her then.
Okay.
Okay, Paul, aging and people with disabilities.
Yes, good morning again. I have nothing specific to share at this time from APD.
Okay, community advisory councils. Coordinated care organizations.
There's nothing on the CACs at this time, but the care CCOs are waiting
Okay.
for the CCO 3.0, which is on delay right now until further notice through OJ. That's
Okay.
all I got for that.
And Brian is not due for another 14 minutes. So Jenny, do you want to go ahead and start? And then when Brian comes, we can put him on.
Yeah, that works for me. So here's my report. Heidi sent it out early. I didn't have a lot to report this month, but as you can see, I did a lot of presentations talking about the commission between September and yesterday. And we've been invited to a lot of these meetings, which I think is fantastic because people want to know about the work of the commission. And I know that's one of the objectives, is to let people know about the commission and keep them updated. And So I think this was a really good, I was surprised how many presentations I did. So thank you to Ruth. She invited me to the Mid-Valley Older Adult Behavioral Health Initiative Stakeholder Work Group on September 11th. And that was a really great meeting because I don't think they had a lot of understanding about the work of the commission. So I prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and it was a very good connection because I was able to connect one of the individuals on that work group with Carewell training to get some ideas about continuing educations that specifically address the needs of individuals experiencing behavioral health conditions. And then also Masara, who is on our staff, is connected with this group as well. So that was a really great connection. So thank you, Ruth, for that. I presented updates at the APD AAA Program Manager District Managers meetings and their line leadership meetings, which are the supervisors. They like to be updated about what the commission is working on. And then on September 27th, we met with another state, the Commonwealth Fund project meeting, and they had a lot of questions about the work we do and the trainings and the registry and things like that. And then we had the ODDS partner meeting, which I was very excited about. Nancy Janes attended that with me, as well as Rebecca Hill, who is one of our employer resource connection consultants. And we talked about that program at that DD meeting that they, at that meeting are individuals from service brokerages and community developmental disability programs and the policy units within DD. And so we were able to give them a presentation about employer resource connection and how that benefits consumers and how it benefits providers and actually the case managers within that system too. And then we asked for volunteers to help us work on a work group to help kind of make the program and the materials more accessible to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I'm pretty excited about that connection and the work we'll be doing there. I met
Jenny,
with, yes,
Jenny,
yeah.
some of these programs are probably new to some of the people,
Oh.
so you might want to explain like what the Common Fund Project meeting, Commonwealth Fund project is.
I'd have to get back to you on that because I can't
Okay.
remember all the details. It was
Okay.
another state who was also looking at training and registry and things like that. But let me get some
Okay,
more
well,
information.
that explains it right there.
Okay. Okay. And then with the Office of Developmental Disabilities Services partner meetings, this is a focus for children and adults experiencing intellectual and developmental disabilities who are served through community developmental disability programs and services brokerages. So that's where they receive their case management, and that's where they receive access to in-home services from personal support workers. So we haven't had as many employer resource connection referrals for that population. And so we're really wanting to focus on that work. Then we met with OSHA and just talked about our program and the unique relationship we have with providers. It's an interesting relationship to try to explain to other state agencies and individuals because it's such a unique relationship that we're not the employer, but we're the employer of record, and we don't supervise or, you know, or train the individuals to the individual specific service needs, but the state pays the worker on behalf of the individual and reports taxes on behalf of the individual, but we provide workers' compensation coordination. So it's coverage. So it's really challenging for people to understand the dynamics of that program. So we had a good conversation and I was able to provide a lot of information about the work we do and the role of consumers and how providers provide services and supports to individuals who are their employers. And then I presented information at the O4AD quarterly meeting, which was great. I updated them about all the work that we've been doing. And I have just been invited to meet with their OPI, Oregon Project Independent Program staff to give an update about the commission as well. I think that presentation went well. And then David will comment more on this, but we had our Rules Advisory Committee on 10/25. And then we had a legislative fiscal office presentation yesterday, where the legislative fiscal office was really interested in the work of the commission and how we're made up and what we do and the services we provide. They asked a lot of questions. I think I could answer about 99% of them, but there are some things I need to follow up on. They are asking for a lot more information about our training, how many people we've trained, the number of trainings we offer, information about our registry, our plans for workforce development. And Ruth was able to attend the meeting with me. And Ruth, I think you had some comments you wanted to share.
Yes. And I am wanting to let the whole commission know that she did us proud. And she had all the data in line and was ready for them. And when she wasn't sure what they were asking, she made sure that they put it in a language that was understandable. And we had a real opportunity to help them to understand the needs of the Home Care Commission and what happens when you keep sending unfunded mandates. And they were quite impressed and were eager and ready for us to come back and talk to them again.
Thank you so much, Ruth, for your very kind words.
Paul, you have a comment?
Yeah, just actually a quick question. So did they initiate this conversation? Did they contact us?
Yes, they contacted us.
Okay.
And they
Yeah.
want to meet with us again. I think they seemed very interested in the work that we do, and I think kind of surprised at some of the work that we do. And I think they have a good understanding now that there are certain things that we can control with the Oregon Home Care Commission, but things we don't, like provider time capture and paying providers on time and accurately. Like, that's not the role of the commission. We don't have, anything to do with that, but we kind of deal with what happens when those payments are not done timely, that we have staff that research those claims and determine late pay penalty fees. So it was a nice opportunity to also let them know some of the things that are not part of the work of the commission. But sometimes people in the community will say, this is, something the commission isn't doing, but it's not something that we do anyway. So like provider time capture is like the perfect example. Like, we don't pay the providers, the commission doesn't.
Okay. Yeah, just curious and without, knowing fully, but I know we're going to talk more about later today with Jane Ellen about agency with choice. I'm just wondering if this group also would be involved in that discussion in the sense that they were, I think some of the, that slide show, for example, slide presentation that we will see later today, but we were able to review, I think, some of the things that are seen as weaknesses and a reason why proponents for an agency with choice are moving forward have to do with the fiscal things. And I just wondered if there would be a tie-in to their interest in the commission related to the agency with choice model that we can talk about later. Just occurred to me, maybe out of place to make the comment, but just wondering if there's some type of relationship there.
I suspect there would be. Like, I think they want to have a better understanding of everything that the commission does and how it may fit into agency with choice, possibly. They didn't mention agency with choice, but I would imagine that's why they might want a better understanding of the work of the commission. All right, so some of the projects we're working hard on is bargaining implementation. So George, like I had mentioned, the contract is expected to be ratified on 11/17/23. And as soon as the contract's ratified, we need to start implementing certain things. So there's deadlines within the contract of when things need to change. So I am not including everything that was part of bargaining because that was addressed, in an executive session at the full bargaining. But I just wanted to highlight some of the projects that we'll be working on. One is a CPR first aid certification. So if a provider has this certification and they have a demonstration of skills, they can earn 25 cents more an hour. So we're looking at who currently has that certification now, and that we know they have a demonstration of skill, and we can move them forward to receive the differential. And then those that we can't determine whether they've had a demonstration of skill, we'll reach out to them, ask them, if they have some sort of documentation that shows that they had demonstration of skill. And if they don't, or they can't provide that, we will offer to pay for their CPR first aid certification through the commission. We also need to develop a new training for professional development certification called Preventing and Reporting Critical Incidents. So we want to make sure that providers are aware of some of the issues that could be really critical for consumers related to like wound care or medication management or some other issue that's happening that really would lead to a negative outcome to a consumer, or hospitalization, or even death. So that was an important training that we wanted to make sure was included for providers. So that will increase the PDC certification total number of hours that an individual has to complete before they get that certification. We're going to offer PDC core and safety related trainings in simplified Chinese. That was part of the bargaining agreement. And also those materials required for that certification in simplified Chinese. We need to create materials and a marketing campaign to recruit providers. And the video that you've seen, that 1-minute animated video, should be finalized anytime. And I appreciate everybody's feedback for that video. Like we had mentioned before, if anybody is interested in being in a live action video talking about the importance of the work providers do or in your experience, please let me know. We would love to have you highlighted in a video. The other thing we need to provide is an online guide available to providers that explains how a provider should report an unsafe work environment. We have made the late and partial payment request form available online. So that was something that we already had in the works, and it is implemented now, and we do get a large number of payment requests through that online form. And then a new thing, we need to complete late and partial payment investigations within 60 days. And this is an important timeline because if we don't complete our work within 60 days, the cap on an individual's late pay penalty fee will be removed. So this is an important deadline for us to follow. Any questions about our bargaining activities? Okay, the next thing, I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate our staff.
Jenny,
And yes, George.
for every time I tried, someone keeps turning my mic off in your guys' department here. It's having a hard time me trying to undo and unmute myself here. So I don't know who's doing that. I was going to catch you before you went on the rest of this. The thing that you said before this on the bargaining stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to let you know that I wasn't going to be able to attend that meeting that was coming up soon. The ACW.
Oh, the Agency with Choice presentation?
Yeah, I won't be able to attend that.
Okay. Heidi has sent out the presentation.
Okay.
And then I will ask Jane Ellen Wydance if she will meet with us too separately so that you can ask questions and provide feedback in another way as well.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Marcia for that suggestion.
Okay, I can do it that way, but
Okay.
today, with me being backed up, I won't be able to attend that meeting.
Okay, thank you, George.
You know.
So I do want to appreciate our staff and the hard work that they do. So I wanted to start with our training unit and congratulating Roberta Lilly and her team for developing and implementing the Exceptional Home Care Worker Training Program. And that was an incredible amount of work, developing that training and implementing it. There was a good turnout and people really learned a lot. They were able to talk about the skills they learned in the training. So they had things they needed to practice outside of class and then come to class and report on it. And that was a pretty successful training. I'm very proud of that for the team. Her team also provided the first enhanced certification training entirely in Spanish. And they're working on developing the training in other languages other than English. So the training team includes Brenda Hoffman, Joanna Walker, Quashana Zuniga, Candace Morley, Susan Whitley, and Kelly Stidham. And I just noticed I spelled Quashana's name wrong. My apologies, Quashana. If you don't mind scrolling down. I also want to call out our Employer Resource Connection program and congratulating Nancy Janes for leading program changes to make the program and materials more accessible for individuals experiencing intellectual and developmental disabilities. And she's also working closely with the team to develop a new payment rate for services. Our customer relations unit, congratulations to JJ, Miguel Cordova, and Karen Burke for resolving the backlog of late and partial payment complaints. And they are working very hard resolving new issues. And we have some new temporary staff that have joined us from the Galt Foundation, Pluto Sagan, Kimberly Hall, and Tracy Holm. Heidi, do you mind scrolling down? Thank you. Then we have our community health worker program, and congratulations to Masari Iwaz Ransom for offering community health worker training starting in August and going through November. And when training is complete, 16 providers will be certified as community health workers. Thank you to Kelly Rosenau and Tricia Wright Coleman with our workers' compensation program for supporting the customer relations unit work, helping that unit out get caught up, managing the CPR first aid program, and planning for the launch of the CPR first aid differential and supporting injured workers. I want to congratulate David Scott Vining for leading a successful Rural Advisory Committee in October, facilitating the strategic planning for commissioners, launching the DocuSign pilot, and leading the Workforce Collaborative. And then thank you to Heidi Alacio for the support she provides the commissioners, the executive director, and the entire commission. If you wouldn't mind scrolling down, Heidi. Heidi is very good at managing my calendar and kind of anticipating my needs before I even know what my needs are. So I'm very thankful for Heidi and the whole team. And that's my report for the month.
Any questions? Okay,
This is
Paul put a note in saying, great report, Jenny, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
this is Commissioner Adams. I want to let Jenny know that what a terrific job she's been doing, and I'm glad that she's on board with us.
Oh, thank you so much, George, for those kind words. They are very meaningful to me.
Okay, has anybody heard from Brian?
Brian is here.
Brian is here, okay. We are ready for you if you're ready.
Excellent, I am ready.
Okay,
As discussed previously, we are going to, rather than have these meetings on a monthly basis, we are moving these to a quarterly basis. And so this is the first quarter of the 23-25 biennium. We are now reporting actuals through the month of September. This is 3 months in and 12.5% of the entire biennium. So we are moving right along. As you can see by the overall budget, this has increased from our prior biennium budget by about $600,000, which is around a 5.5% to 6% increase, which is pretty significant for the size of this program. Most of that comes in the way of personal services and payroll related to our home care commission staff, but we'll go through and see some other areas where we've made some adjustments. One area that we have touched on, if you can see the the general fund and other fund budget, that's increased by over $1.5 million from where it was last biennium. We reduced our federal fund budget because we were not expending that. As you recall, our federal fund expenditures was always significantly under, and we were running close up against our general fund budget. And so we've made those changes based on how our invoices are processed. And I'll discuss a little bit about how we've arrived at those numbers and steps that APD and the Home Care Commission leadership team is making to multiply general fund dollars and further assist those in need across the state. You can see our total expenditures to date for both general fund and other fund is at $770,000, and federal fund is just over $67,000. We do project a deficit of $311,000. However, this is by and large due to the significant cost of living adjustments that we are going to see in December of this year and in January of 2025. What we have not seen yet is the salary pot numbers that'll be dedicated to the Home Care Commission budget. And so once we have those, they will largely offset the deficit that we are facing. Additionally, we are fully staffed in the Home Care Commission. We do not have those vacancy savings that we had at prior biennium. And so, we're not going to start off with significant savings there that we'll have to make up. You can see in my narrative that in August, all eligible staff received a bonus of $1,500. When we consider the tax and other implications from that, it ended up being just under $1,900 per employee. And so that also has set back our deficit, but part of the salary pot is intended to cover this bonus. So we should see that get reconciled shortly. One other adjustment that we have made due to our collective bargaining is that parking reimbursement program we've decided to continue that, but rather than funding it at $120,000 as we did in 21-23, that's been reduced to $10,000, which is more in line with the actuals that we had from last biennium. Adjustments better reflect our spending plans rather than using formulas from the 1921 budget to project. So this should reflect closer to what we had anticipated. Are there any questions on that overview to start with? Not seeing any, so I'm going to continue on to the budget for the admin unit. This is our largest unit. It consists of our staff, their salaries, benefits, and other payroll expenses, as well as services and supplies related to the operations of the Home Care Commission admin unit. We have the general fund and other fund expenditures to date of 9.71%. Total expenditures at 8.3%. This is largely due to our services and supplies being processed a month to a month and a half in arrears. When we pay things on our spots cards or when we receive invoices or services for professional services, it takes time to process those. So it's normal to be about a month behind at this point. If you'll scroll down a little bit more, Heidi. You can see when we look at our administrative budget, we have allocated $5.5 million here. We have spent 11.3%, which is slightly under our 3-month target of 12.5. Part of our exceeding on the swing on this has to do with that bonus that was paid out in August. You can see we're averaging about $207,000 per month. Our projected average right now is $200,000, which should increase by 6.5% in December, and then another 6.5% in January of 2025. So that we're a little bit behind here is actually positive. We have increased our Home Care Commission training budget to reflect what our intents are for this biennium. Because the training is paid in arrears, this is lagging behind. For Employer Resource Connection, we also have increased the budget here. But one thing we've also done here is we have adjusted how we are operating our federal match. We're looking at, as more of these services are qualifying for federal match, we've increased our projections for what our federal fund match would be. And so rather than looking at this line item in the future and seeing a deficit, we should be able to track this a little closer to what our projections are. We've not seen any expenses for the home care worker registry. This is largely a services and supplies line item that as maintenance and updates are made to the registry, we'll see those invoices come in. So not seeing monthly invoices at this point is as expected. The home care commissioners, we're not seeing those come through, but again, a lot of the stipend and other payments to the commissioners are processed in arrears and have not seen those yet. For workforce support and development, these claims are starting to come in at $1,350, and we've not yet received anything on the parking reimbursement. This next graph shows our personal services lines. You can see that spike in August. That is from that $1,500 bonus. You can see that we're tracking right about $200,000. It's a little offset because of that spike, but I believe that this will become more of a flat line as we're going forward. And you can see that the services and supplies for July, because they're processed in arrears, having that be next to nothing is expected. And then for August and September, things are starting to pick up. And this is basically the verbiage here is explaining what I've covered. We are anticipating additional payments for the commissioners, increasing that from the $30 to the $155. We've discussed this previously. And as we go through the biennium, we should see the legislation that was passed regarding not counting that income as serving as commissioners against their income to make sure they could maintain their benefits. Our unit for developmental disability and mental health, this we have $780,000, and we have spent $60,000, just under $61,000. If we flatline this is tracking fairly closely to what we'd anticipated. Maybe slightly behind, but not out of the ordinary at this point in the biennium. I think the next table shows our expenditures related to our employer resource connection. You can see this is, again, if it's paid a month in arrears, I would expect the burn rate here to be about 8.3%. So we're slightly behind, but this is an area where we have increased our budget. This is the graph that shows all those the different categories. You can see our trend lines for our training budget is increasing. Again, because so little is done in the first month of the biennium, there's claims that are processed that hit our prior biennium budget. It's expected to be next to nothing in July, but then we'll see it ramp up. And you can see that both the training and the PSW ERC, those numbers are increasing as we're going through the biennium. We maintained the budget for our traditional health workers training. In speaking with Jenny, she's let me know that we are actively looking at training opportunities, and we have training on the schedule. So we should see these line items increase over the next few months. Next section regarding enhanced and exceptional workers. This is already starting to track a little higher than it was last biennium at this point. It's nice to see the resources available for enhanced, exceptional, and VDQ. For those with ventilator dependent quadriplegia, this is a very narrow area, and so we've dedicated these resources accordingly. This is kind of a make sure we have sufficient resources for the entire biennium. And should we arrive at a point where we're reaching our budget here, we would certainly work with our APD leadership team to increase the funding here, but at no point do we anticipate reducing the funding for this critical unit. The last involves our training stipend. We've not
You
seen
have
any-
Brian, you
Oh,
have a
yes.
question.
Commissioner Adams, I am sorry.
My question to you, Brian, it's been told that it's gonna be doing a quarterly and not every month, correct?
Correct.
So here's another question. With what as commissioners are doing and will be going through through our transition here, making things better, like putting new staff in, are we going to be able to have enough funding to put and hire new staff and better staff to help our committee with this situation on what we're planning?
That's a great question. What I'll do as I'm looking through this, part of the staffing, if I understood what Jenny was saying, we've contracted out through Galt. Is that correct, Jenny? And we do have some
Yes.
professional service, and she confirmed that. We do have some professional services budget in our services and supplies area that would cover temporary staffing through Galt. If we have additional state staff, whether they are funded or not funded, I will continue to track the expenditures related to that. I've got a table that I use that projects expenses by unit. And if I see a significant increase, all of my future items will reflect that. Additionally, even though we don't meet on a monthly basis as we used to, I provide this report to the leadership team on a monthly basis. And I do meet with Jenny and other of the leaders within APD to discuss anything that I see that's out of the ordinary. And if I were to see anything that is projecting any sort of constraints or risks towards the budget, I would definitely make Jenny aware of that as soon as I saw that.
Okay, the one other thing I wanted to convey with you, Brian, also is getting more staff to be able to answer questions from consumers instead of them having to leave messages on machine. Are we going to have enough budget for that, for the staff to do that?
I would yield to Jenny on that. I can certainly work with her on the budget. And the nice thing about the Home Care Commission being a part of the larger umbrella of APD is if we do have a need for those staff and they are hired, we could adjust the amount that we project for our staffing budget within the Home Care Commission accordingly. And so if we, for example, and I'm not saying that we're doing this, but if we decide to bring on 3 additional staff and dedicate those 3 additional staff from other areas of APD, what it would do is reduce their respective budget by that amount and increase the budget we had available. And if that does happen, what I will show in the very first section is that our funding expenditures and our budget for general fund as well as federal fund for those individuals will increase.
Thank you for the hard work you're doing, and Jenny as well as far as staff. I'm excited as commissioner to acknowledge these great changes taking place so we can better serve the consumers.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Adams. I also see that that Marcia has a question.
Yes, Brian.
Yes.
Who is Galt?
Galt is a staffing agency. They handle professional staffing and Oregon Department with Human Services, and I believe the Department of Administrative Services have contracts with us to use Galt as our primary source for professional staffing on temporary basis.
Are they based in Oregon?
Galt is I do not believe that Galt is an Oregon based entity. I believe Galt is a national organization.
Okay, thank you.
All right. It looks like Commissioner Adams has a question unless the hand just hadn't come down from his prior question.
He didn't lower his hand.
Oh, okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't going to
Sorry.
progress
Right.
and miss anything.
My mistake.
Well, that's okay, Commissioner Adams. I think we're down to one of the last pages. The training stipend, we've not seen this come through yet, but Jenny has assured me that we do have several training opportunities coming up and we should see this increase. And then the last bit is just the breakdown of that we can't show anything for those expenditures at this point. Training revenue to date has been $45. Whether or not we continue to report on this, I'm not sure. Jenny said that she was going to look at opportunities for increasing availability for training, revenue-based training, as opposed to DHS provided training that we do free of charge. So if this changes dramatically, we'll definitely let you know. But as on a quarterly basis, this is fairly typical to see only one or two individuals accessing that for that revenue generating stream. With
Hey, are there
that,
any other questions for him? Well,
Brian,
thank you, Brian.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Do you ever send staff to various conventions or conferences out of this budget?
I do know that there are APD staff that go to various conventions throughout. I know that we do have budget inside of the Oregon Home Care Commission budget for travel. Most of that is in-state travel. If there was something that a commissioner would be eligible for out-of-state travel, and I believe that there is sufficient budget to do that. If not, and it was critical for some of the leadership or even potentially some of the commissioners to go to one of these conventions, if it is a national convention, we would assess that, and if necessary, use the funds available in the umbrella from APD administration to make sure that that was done.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And I don't know if I've met you yet, Commissioner Mayer. It's a pleasure working with you.
Well, it's a pleasure working with you as well. Thank you very much for giving us these overviews. It's very, very helpful.
Are there any other new commissioners that I have neglected to introduce myself to?
I don't think there's any others. Just George and Mary has been our two newest.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
And
I usually
Mary is here on behalf of the Governor's Commission on Senior Services.
Oh, wonderful. Well, welcome, Mary. It's great to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I usually start out by saying, for the record, my name is Brian Holman. I am the budget and fiscal analyst for Department of Human Services, Aging and People with Disabilities program area, focusing on delivery and design. And part of that purview is the Home Care Commission. If you have any questions regarding budget or impacts of any sort of legislation that may affect the commission or services or whatnot, please reach out to Jenny. I work with a lot of the analysts to make sure that the needs are appropriately accounted for and projected. And so I can, if I don't have the answers during this meeting, I'll certainly respond to Jenny and make sure that that information is provided.
Thank you.
All right, with that, that concludes my presentation. As always, I truly appreciate the work that you do on behalf of our elderly and aging and people with disabilities population in Oregon. It is invaluable to me. I say that the work that you do makes the work I do worthwhile, and I truly appreciate the service that you render. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, our next is Rules Advisory Committee report. David?
Well, thank you, Ruth. Appreciate that. And hello, everybody. I feel like I need to figure out how to talk for about 45 minutes really quick. So I'll just start ranting, I guess, about something. Did you know that elephants can, no, I'm just joking. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk about our Rule Advisory Committee. We held that last week on the 25th of October. Some of you were there and able to join us. It went very well. It was a very lively discussion at some points. But we were going over the rules of which you had received a draft copy. I'm going to pull that up on my screen really quickly. So sorry, Heidi, I'm going to take control.
That's fine, amigo.
We all know how I like to take control of Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hey, I see Randy just popped on too. So hi, Randy. So yeah, we had our Rule Advisory Committee. It went really well. The draft rules, most of them were small changes going in there. A lot of stuff about it's been required in the CBA or negotiated a while ago in the CBA that all CPR first aid certifications would also include a demonstration of skills if they were going to count towards any OHCC certification. So one of the rule changes, I added that throughout everything, making sure that that was clear. Also with the upcoming CBA, once that's ratified, there's going to be a differential component to that. So having a demonstration of skills is going to be required so that the differential can then apply to a provider's CPR first aid certification. Other things that were added in there, Jenny had mentioned our exceptional home care worker certification, which has been going on since August. We added a definition of what it means to be an exceptional home care worker, along with the qualifications for what that is, what it takes to get the certification itself. So added that in there. We also clarified what it means for the registry to exist. So formerly, obviously, we had our own registry program, the registry and referral system, which is sunsetting very soon as we've replaced it with Carina. And so changing the language there so that we can say that the commission approves a registry matching system. So that was added and updated along with what it looks like for providers to go in there and what they need to do to stay inside of the registry system and be able to match with consumer employers, along with what are staff expectations when they have a new consumer employer that they're helping them get on Carina, and then making referrals, telling them how to get onto Carina, and then making referrals to ERC if they need additional help. The big change, obviously, was the extension of continuing education, pushing that implementation date out so that we can make sure that there is a robust catalog of continuing education courses for providers when it comes up for them to take those classes. So they're going to need to take 12 hours of training, and we'd like there to be enough choices on there for them to be able to cater these 12 hours to their needs, the specific needs of the consumer employer that they're helping support. There are some required trainings in there, like cultural competency, for example, but another big chunk of hours. We want providers to be able to cater it to their own needs, go where they want to go, and learn what they need to learn so that they can provide the best person-centered support for their consumer employer. Those were all our changes, I think. Right? Did I miss one, Jenny?
Oh, what a blessing.
There's so many. You're muted, so we don't know if you're saying, you're just agreeing. She said I was spot on. I did phenomenal. It's good.
Did you mention the exceptional
Yeah, I did.
training certification?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the first thing I said.
So oh, sorry. I don't know if you want to scroll down and show those specific training changes.
Yeah, and I everybody got a copy, right, of the draft rules. Good. Okay. First, this was the biggest change we made, right? We had to update our website. No, this is the smallest change. It took a second because DHS has a new website. We had to update this website so that people could link to the CBAs. And all of this stayed the same. These are the definitions section. Here's our new definition for exceptional home care worker and what that means. And I believe Commissioner Johnson just had his RAC yesterday on exceptional as well, exceptional needs for the consumer employer. I missed it. I'm sorry. I am so sorry, Commissioner Johnson. I meant to be there and it slipped right past me somehow.
The hardest part was when they were stretching that rack out, making me taller and taller. I never been before.
Yes, that is a great pun. I love it. Then we come down to the definition for registry. Again, changing this so that it's not us managing the tool itself, but approving the tool that is being used. Then we come down. Nothing in this section of the rules that were changed. Scroll. But provider training, this is where we had our changes. First thing here was the CPR. You'll see that I added the demonstration skills. I have not added mention of differential yet, as that CBA is still waiting to be ratified. So that should be ratified on the 17th, Jenny said, because I was paying attention and knew. And so when that is ratified, if it's ratified, when it's ratified, I'll add language here to make referral to differential, since the rules are still open and we want to make sure to catch that and have it in there. That change gets added everywhere, just to be very clear that any time a CPR first aid is mentioned, it has to have the demonstration of skills. Next big one, Marcia.
Yes, I just saw professional development certificate fly by, and earlier in the meeting, I don't know who mentioned that there's going to be an additional course added on when there's a crisis. I don't know the exact title they used. Does that require another RAC to get that to change the qualifications for a PDC? And will people that currently hold a PDC have to add that course to their repertoire?
I'm gonna let Jenny answer.
Yeah, David, will you scroll back up? Do we list the specific courses for
I don't believe
PDC?
so.
So if we don't list the specific courses, we would not have to open up the rules again to add that.
Yeah.
So people who currently have professional development certification won't have to do the new course until it's time to renew.
Okay, all right. You have answered me. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And George.
David, which I want to ask you is, I'm still going over this of what you sent to me. What day are you still wanting? When's the last day to go over this, to get it back to you?
Yeah, so for the rules is what we're talking about here. This will be, I'm actually going to ask you all for a vote to approve this to move forward toward the next step, which is public comments. We'll make the submission to our rules coordinator, who will then open it up to public comment and testimony. So that'll be, but I need your vote first. So that's going to happen today. But if you're mentioning or referring, George, to the strategic planning stuff that we're doing, that's by Wednesday of next week.
Okay, so this is not what you sent us, right?
This is a different thing. Yeah, this was sent a while ago.
Okay. So the other thing that we were working on, I could give you as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is exceptional home care worker certification. This is what people need to do to get their certification to be exceptional, and clarifying what it takes. So the courses have been developed here by OHCC. And again, those have been running since August. I believe we've had 2 cohorts, but somebody may be able to correct me if I'm wrong there.
I think we
with
had
more
one
coming in the future.
cohort, and so I think the training unit will be making some adjustments based on how the first training went and, you know, refining things.
That's happening there.
I also just want to mention that the rules on exceptional certification work in tandem with Paul's rules on the exceptional certification. So if somebody has exceptional home care worker certification, they have to be working with an individual who qualifies for those exceptional needs part of the program. So those 2 things have to go together.
Thanks for that clarification, Jenny. An exceptional worker has to be working for an exceptional supports need individual for the certification to then kick in. Similar to the exceptional for PSW, and then also the enhanced for home care worker and PSWs. That is there. More demonstration of skills. Demonstration of skills. Here is where we make our changes for continuing education. These have been filed as temporary rules before, so you don't see them pop up as red on this particular document, but I'll go down to it. Right here, we want to push that out for providers who have an end date of March 1st, 2026. So that CareWell has more time to get their catalog available for providers to have more time to get whatever resources they might need to take the continuing education courses, for us to know the data exchange, all of these components that will go into providers having to really complete continuing education, pushing that implementation date out is going to be beneficial for all of us. And then finally, there's one more, but I forgot about this one. So because refresher training was a one-time thing and it's done and over with, we went ahead and struck these from the rules. And then our final one, this is the changes to describe the registry as an approved matching system that we've gone through. You'll see that it includes mostly striking out this idea of us maintaining it and having approved it, and then what it needs to provide as well. Some of this whole section is about what APD staff does, and so changing that, and it's a little bit less rigorous for them now. George?
Yeah, when we're done with this and voted on this, can you send that to me in an email so I can go over it more?
Yeah, I'll make sure you get another copy of it, George.
Thank you.
Yep. This section here is saying that, hey, if a provider or a consumer employer is having an issue with using Carina, or they don't really understand the system, that then the staff should make referral to the employer resource connections. And then the qualifications for a provider to stay on Carina and what they need to do to stay to make sure that they're still there. We had a little bit stricter stuff going on for our registry. It's a little bit looser with Carina, but it's still very similar. If they commit fraud or do something bad, right, they can be removed from the system. We've made sure that Carina is able to do that. But release of information, right, it's not the same. So we had to strike that out. The system does require information updates, and it prompts the providers to do that versus a 90-day thing for us that was just kind of set in stone. Some more change in language there and there. Changing registry to matching system. Same thing down there, and that is it. So yeah, those were all of the changes that were discussed at the RAC. Conversation went really well. Had a lot of really good discussion, especially around the continuing education and just other fun stuff. So Jenny looks like she's going to say something because she came off mute. So Jen.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to mention during the RAC participants didn't have any suggested edits to the changes that we made. So there was a lot of discussion and questions, but nothing specifically about changing the rule language. And then I just want to let you know that Molly Malone with Carewell was in attendance, and she provided an overview of the continuing education courses available through Carewell, and then also asked for some input about potential continuing education topics. So the next step, there is a public hearing that will happen for these rules and a public comment period. So that will give us another opportunity to make any changes that we may need to make to these rules. So in order for us to move forward with the rulemaking process, we would like you to approve these rules so that we can keep moving forward.
I make a motion to approve these rules. Commissioner Mayor.
Marcia Wenzel,
Oh,
I
Marcia.
make a motion to second.
Hey, it's been motioned and second. Any further discussion? Okay, for all those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, you have it.
Yay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time and going over this with me and your input as well. Those of you that were able to attend. I was funny. Like it was one of my, I knocked that out of the ballpark. All right, but it's good.
He really did. He did a fantastic job, and this was his first rule advisory committee.
So look forward to lots more with you.
Well, if everything goes the way we've been planning, there's going to be more.
Yes, this is so true.
Commissioner Johnson will be well stretched.
I was going to ask, since we have a few minutes, if it would be okay to ask Commissioner Johnson how his rule advisory committee went.
Well, I think, just a minute, Mark, were you saying something?
yeah, I wasn't.
Okay. Go ahead. Jenny, go ahead.
Oh, yes. So Commissioner Johnson, I was wondering if you would provide an update about how your rule advisory committee went and what you talked about at that rule advisory committee meeting.
Yeah, it was a stretching experience. It was my first RAC as well in regards to conducting. But so the RAC focused just on a rule change to the in-home services rule related to the enhanced care rate that that was just described it's for individuals who receive in-home services who are on what's called shift services, where they receive at least 224 hours of care a week. That's 16 hours a day of awake time where they would receive care, and some more than that even. So those individuals with really high care needs, who also are assessed in the area of cognition, in the area of challenging behaviors of substantial or full assist level need in challenging behaviors. Those individuals would be eligible to receive the enhanced care from a home care worker who has been trained by the commission, and that home care worker will receive the enhanced care pay rate when they provide services to eligible consumers. So basically, this is a new area that we were adding to the rule in the area of the shift services section. And so it's all positive in the sense that this is a positive development, if you will, or movement for consumers, so that they would receive more better care or a different level of care than they had previously. And then also for the providers, the home care workers who have the certification, the training and certification to receive more compensation when they work with consumers with these great functional needs who also have challenging behaviors of that level. The RAC went pretty well. We had a good discussion. There was no major changes suggested at this point. So, because again, it's pretty straightforward. Again, this was collective bargaining as well. I looked in my notes and I actually found notes back to like a white paper. I don't think I'm not sure if I had a part in writing or not. I didn't see the author, but this has been a discussion for a number of years now. And so it now just came to fruition. And it will hopefully after late January, when the public comment period will end, it'll be put into rule permanently. And I know that commission, we already have the training and we're up and going. Our estimates right now are there are about 46 or so, roughly, give or take, individuals who are on shift services and who are assessed with substantial or full assist needs in the area of challenging behaviors, who potentially could benefit from these enhanced care services.
Okay. Anything else?
I had a question. There was also a rule advisory committee for the home care worker rules. Were there any attendees from this commission on there? Anybody participate?
Yeah, I did as well on that. Tracy Lerner, actually a couple days ago, led that. Basically, she was the major focus was to add to her rule a couple other state employment categories of individuals that cannot be paid providers. In other words, there was, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't give specifics, but there were a couple other departments within ODHS or even APD that were also included on a list, an existing list in her rule of individuals that could not be paid providers while being also state employees because of potential conflict of interest that could arise. This was based on an actual situation where there was an employee from a certain area of our government, of ODHS, who was also I think an individual was a PCA and a personal care worker and a home care worker, and there was some irregularities and some things going on. So that was some of the initiative to include to the list that had already been in rule a few other employment categories. For example, none of us in APD could be, those of us who are employed in APD are allowed to be home care workers, and as well on the side or something like that. And so this was along those lines, the type of a focus that Tracy brought forward in that RAC.
Marcia.
Yeah, Paul, I thought it used to be that any state employee could not work as a home care worker. So this narrows the scope. In other words, if you were a state employee that was a diesel mechanic, you could hypothetically work as a home care worker.
I think in rule, I think that was generally the idea. I think in rule, it was only a few of the different divisions within APD or ODHS were actually listed in rule. And so the purpose of this RAC was to add more to that list. The rule doesn't say no one employed with ODHS or APD, it just doesn't make that type of a blanket statement. It kind of lists some different divisions within APD that or areas within APD. So this was just adding to the list that was already existing, but I don't believe it says anywhere that I'm aware of. In fact, I don't think it ever says kind of more of a blanket statement like you just mentioned, that no employee with ODHS can ever be a home care worker, or personal support worker, or personal care attendant. I don't think that type of statement. So this is in lieu of that. I don't think it lists every possible, obviously every employee category. It just lists those that are most, I don't know, that maybe there's been some experience with, or that through Tracy's work that have been identified as the more common areas of employment where they may see somebody also wanting to be a paid provider for a consumer. That's my understanding.
Thank you. I've learned something. Can you send me a copy of your RAC goings on, Paul?
Yes, I can send you the documents that we distributed yesterday, or any other information you would like. And then there is a public comment. I'll send you the agenda, and at the bottom of the agenda, it has the date for the public comment period as well. But I'll send you those.
Okay, thank you.
Or
This
to
is what-
anyone else, well, that would like them, I'm happy to send that.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul, for such a great summary and for not having any advance notice. That was fantastic.
Gotta be willing to stretch at all times,
Paul, this is Commissioner Adams. Something I want to ask you. Does it seem like to you and all commissioners that some of these rules that have been put into place for employers and consumers, does it seem like it's getting more constringent? Or do you think it's being relaxed with these type of rules?
I'm not sure, George, if I completely captured it, but for example, in the RAC that I mentioned that I was involved in regarding the enhanced care rate and adding that to the shift service control, that's going to be a benefit really to everyone involved. It'll benefit the consumer who receives this level of services and has this need. It'll really benefit, financially, and rightly so, the provider who, when we're talking about challenging behaviors at this level, we're talking about aggressive, potential physical actions, verbal abuse to a pretty high level, other erratic behaviors that could potentially be harmful to the consumer or to others. That would make up substantial assist or full assist in challenging behaviors. So someone who serves consumers with those needs not only needs the training to do their best to understand and provide the service adequately, but they should be compensated for that. So I think in this particular change that I'm referring to, very positive and very needed, a change that's going to go into rule. The one I mentioned with Tracy, again, I think that's important too, just to delineate the lines or the parameters, if you will, of who can be a paid provider of consumers and who couldn't be, and the potential conflict of interest that could occur if we didn't have those type of parameters. So I see, generally speaking, at least in these two examples, pretty positive outcomes.
So what would be considered a conflict of interest in that scenario?
Well, it could be maybe benefiting in some way from the services provided to an individual. Maybe the individual is a family member, and the services provided possibly could benefit others beyond the consumer, beyond the recipient themselves, others in the household. So I would think those are the type of things. There could be.
I
don't
have
know,
additional examples, Paul.
Go ahead, please.
So if somebody worked at a local office and or a case manager who authorizes services for an individual and develops the service plan and authorizes the payment, there's a conflict of interest there. If you're also a home care worker, there's a potential problem, a conflict there. It could be, sorry, I said I had all these examples.
That-
and
for
that's
that- Jenny, for
Yes.
that same person or for any person? Like if you are a case manager and you care for your father at home, and as a provider.
Yes, that would definitely be a conflict of interest. So it's kind of a way of making sure there's a clear delineation between those who authorize services, determine eligibility, create the payments, process the payments, authorize those payments, are not also part of that workforce, just to make sure there are no conflicts there. I mean, unfortunately, there have been cases before, fraud cases, where somebody from the local office was creating vouchers for themselves as a home care worker, for instance. So we just want to make it clear that I think Marcia was right. There was more, it was more broad that if you were employed by the state, you couldn't be also a home care worker. And then through discussions in the Rule Advisory Committee that was held for those temporary rules, we kind of narrowed in on what would be considered a conflict and why somebody who works at a local office who has access to information about consumers and other providers wouldn't also then be a provider.
Okay, now I understand. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we are due for a break. We are early for the break. So is there anything else that we need to be discussing that we have this extra time?
Ms. Chair, this is Commissioner Adams. Do we have the right as commissioners to discuss the change of the rating system for consumers when they go to be evaluated for the review every 1 year?
Jenny, that would be under case management, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so thank you for asking. Any of those changes to that drive eligibility, like the service priority levels and how those are determined, and those would go under the unit that Paul works with, the long-term care services and supports, and the Oregon administrative rules that deal with eligibility. But that's not to say that you can't have a discussion about that and make recommendations about what kind of changes you would like to see. I mean, you can have, as a commissioner, you can have discussions about any topic you feel is important and that would impact consumers or providers or in-home services in general.
We have about 20 minutes if this might be something you want to discuss, George.
Well, I'm discovering that the rating system, as it goes along being reviewed one time a year for consumers and employers versus for consumers, are getting potentially rated the wrong way on their reviews. Wherever they need the most help in, they're ending up getting the less help.
George, do you think it would be helpful if we invited somebody from the long-term care services and supports unit to talk about the assessment process and what is evaluated during that in-home assessment?
Sure.
I mean, if that's something you would think would be helpful, because then you have the ability to ask questions about how do you determine whether somebody is an assistance, something, or substantial assistance or full assistance. You'd have the ability to learn more about that and ask questions.
Yes. And in my opinion, I know I'm going to be on record because it's recorded. Case managers need to be trained better in the rating system when they go to review employer consumers one time a year. That's just my opinion.
We hear you and it will be in the minutes.
I second the motion.
I'd like to, from an APD side, if I may, first of all, say that wonderful comment, George, Marcia, and I think we would all agree, and certainly in the unit that I work with, that would be a strong desire. The training unit that was established a couple of years ago continues to work really hard. In fact, during this meeting, I missed our monthly time with new case manager training, where the staff goes in and introduces themselves and describes what we're doing, so that the new case managers know who we are and how to serve. But you're bringing up a great point, George, that is not at all distant from the minds of the folks that work in the Medicaid services and support units. We want to continue to help case managers develop person-centered care that not only records data, but really tries to provide care that is meaningful, meets the desires and preferences of the consumer while addressing their care needs. So I really appreciate those comments, but I do want to also say we're working on it. Again, one of the challenges not only facing the commission, but certainly local offices throughout the state is a shortage of case managers and the workload that existing case managers have, which makes it really difficult sometimes for that type of care that we just described to to be implemented or that type of thing. So but that doesn't mean that we don't want to strive for, pursue, train for, and seek to always improve at every level, and as well as in case management and their duties with consumers. So I just want to let you know that's a great comment, and I hope that we can continue working forward with the challenges that we face today.
Go ahead, George.
I just want to make sure that the consumer importer is treated a lot better when they're being reviewed one time a year than what there are in the past. I mean, because some consumers and importers, it's how it's the rating system, like full assist and that kind of stuff. It's something I'm discovering.
I just want to comment that if any individual is having an issue with their case manager or their assessment, to please reach out to me so that we can have a discussion and I can kind of be a liaison between you and the local office if you need some help.
Thank you.
Also, sorry, go ahead, Marcia.
I have heard, and I'm also finding through my experience with my current case manager, that they're not being trained on the new changes and developments. It's more or less the new people coming on as case managers that get the current training, and it causes troubles. I'm finding I need to educate my case manager and send her where there's better change, because she certainly does not know about it.
That's
I know
a
that-
very interesting comment, Marcia, because I wonder if we could have also somebody from the training unit talk about case management training. And I don't know if there's ever been any conversation about like continuing education requirements for case managers, especially around issues that they learned about years ago but may need a refresher. So if that's another thing commissioners are interested in learning more about, I can also make arrangements for that.
Well, I would also be interested in knowing how they keep records, because I find that when they change a case manager, quite often the new case manager has no notes or records from the old case manager. And then they start either asking the same questions over again, or those services aren't there.
Thank you, Ruth. I will comment on that since I was a case manager. We do there's a case narration in Oregon Access where it houses all the historical narration and also access to all the old assessments. So really it's less about having access to that information than it is taking the time to review all that information when you're meeting with somebody for the first time. And so we can bring that forward to the training unit too, to see if that's something that they talk about for the assessment process, like looking at old information too, to get a sense of history.
Maybe we can do a unit on case management and what goes on over several different months.
Do we do any training of providers on how to work with case managers?
Oh, Lordy, no.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting training. Well, the issue too is that we have providers who want to work with case managers, but because there's shortages in the local offices, case managers aren't always readily available.
Right.
So one of the things we are educating providers about is asking for the worker of the day or a supervisor if the case manager is not available, because we have certain expectations for providers if there's a health and safety issue or if they need to work more hours because of an emergency, that they contact the case manager. So we just want to make it more accessible to contact the local office and share information.
Yeah, and I'm curious about what you do when you can't contact the case manager ahead, and your consumer employer still needs assistance. You're torn. The provider is torn because of this rule that you have to prearrange your emergency. Difficult to do on some issues.
Right. So that's why we're wanting people to ask for the worker of the day. So consumers can ask for a worker of the day and providers can as well. So share that information with providers that you have contact with.
Yeah, after hours. I've run across it. Anyway.
Yeah, I think we could almost make a training module out of this for providers.
You know, a thought occurred to me too a moment ago that I wonder if we're doing, or if the training is sufficient, you know, for consumers, in-home consumers, to train their workers. And
Yeah.
those U.S. services know much better than I, but you know, a key aspect of having, you know, services done in a way that really meets the needs of the individual is having that consumer really provide direction to a degree and focus on how they would like things done, when they would like things done, etc. And I don't know if, you know, that would help the worker a lot to know, you know, we may see hopefully a greater impact of the workers' actual work for a consumer if they can better align how they do their work with the preference of the consumer. So that is another area where maybe the commission can be involved in looking into, are we providing sufficient training for consumers in that way, or is the training team through the case manager?
Paul, I think that's an excellent question. And I'm wondering if any of the consumers are involved with any of the work groups with the Employer Resource Connection Program in development of training tools and resources. And if not, I think it would be great if anybody's interested. I will let Nancy know to invite you to those meetings, because I think consumers have such a valuable insight and experience and know exactly, you know, what would be beneficial for a consumer to know when they're hiring a home care worker.
That's a terrific comment, Jenny. I agree. In general terms, I really feel I've felt this in recent weeks and months as we've been meeting. that this is my own opinion, that we really need to see our ERC enhanced. I just see this as a tool, in my opinion, that could really make, I think they're doing wonderful work, okay? And the people I've had interaction with, I've been very impressed with. Boy, we just need to multiply them about tenfold in the work they're doing. And I would love to see any way we can support what they're doing and enhance what they're doing. I'm completely in favor of.
Right. I will let Nancy know to invite. I can send an invitation, have her send an invitation to everyone, and you can decide whether to participate or not.
Okay,
Yeah, this Commissioner Adams here. I just would like to see the rating system better than what it is.
well, we agree with you, George, but this is outside of our parameters because this is set up by APD and some of it comes out of the CMS. So we would have a long road to get to the very end of this where some of the changes could get made, but this could be a starting point where, since we could make this as something that we're interested in, and when we talk with other groups and like have Mary take it back to GCSS and Mark take it back to ODC, that we're interested and concerned about this area, then we could start the ball rolling.
Okay, then, Ms. Chair, do I have your permission, since I have a CMS meeting today, to provide it at the board today?
You can ask about it, but we haven't made this as an issue yet. We'd have to decide, is this something we're going to work on?
Okay. Then I'll leave it alone with CMS until further notice.
Well, you can ask about it and say that you'd heard about it in other meetings and want to know more on it and get back the feedback you can out of it, but not just say that the Home Care Commission is working on this, but that it was discussed in another meeting.
Okay,
And I think it's time for our break. So I'm asking y'all to be sure to be back here by a couple minutes before 12 so that we can get this going.
Okay.
And Heidi, I need to talk with you.
Okie dokie.
Heidi, do you want to
You-
turn off the recording?
Yes. The ASL interpreters will be able to chat and everybody else will have to raise their hand.
Okay.